Hello, my name is Julie, and it's time for me to reread and rewatch Catching Fire. So this is a vlog series I'm doing throughout the entirety of 2026 as per request, in which I am going to be rereading the entire Hunger Games trilogy for the first time since I was 11, and then I will be reading and watching the prequels for the very first time. I have already obviously made a Hunger Games video if you want to check that out here if you haven't already caught it, but I am just going to be giving you my reactions. Sometimes I have literary critique and sometimes I'm just saying fun things. This is everyone's favorite book in the series, so I'm excited to get into it. I don't remember which one was my favorite book in the series, but I remember that Catching Fire is the best movie in the series for sure. I have not actually rewatched the movies at all since they came out in theaters, except for the back half of Catching Fire. And I'll give you a bunch of differences that I found in between the book and the movie. No need for more ado. Let's just get going. Hello. I am 40% of the way through Catching Fire, which means I have not done my job of checking in with you. I'm gonna tell you, I did not remember anything about this book except for the games themselves. And that is helped by the fact that I watched that part of the movie recently. I am 40% of the way through this book, and it is not even time for the reaping yet. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, how could there be so much of this book that I don't remember, and also that feels like so low plot while also skipping through time a lot when there's so much that I know that happens in this book. I just want to say the opening line of this book is so iconic for one reason and one reason only, and that is the old school booktube first sentence challenge. Do people remember that? The first sentence challenge, you would blindfold yourself and somebody would pick books off your shelf and read the first sentence, and in almost every single one of those videos people would have, I clasp the flask between my hands even though the warmth from the tea has long since leached from the frozen air. Katniss is in Victor's village. She's hanging out as best she can. Life has mostly proceeded as usual, like in terms of every day, except for the fact that, you know, they're in a different house and she has money. And not only does she have money, but the district also has a little bit more money now because everybody in the district gets like an extra helping of food once a month because of the victors. And I'm like, that's crazy. And we're about to go on the victory tour. And when they said victory tour, I'm like, yes, I remember that that happens, but I had no memory of the actual tour. Let's stick with what's going on at home and then we'll go on the victory tour. Katniss is really torn with her feelings about Gale. Her and Peeta have kind of iced each other out because he doesn't really trust her as much as he did, at least emotionally, even though, yes, they would have each other's backs physically. He's like backing off because he's like, okay, she was just doing that because she had to. She, you know, her back was against the wall. And Katniss is very confused about any possible feelings she has for Peeta because she was in an environment where she was forced to do things that were out of her control. And now with Gale, she is having to tread this line because the whole world is seeing her and Peeta as being together, and even though they're not under constant surveillance, first of all, they don't know that, but without their permission, Gale has been pitched to the public as her cousin. Who did that? To kind of explain why the two of them are so close without it being like threatening to the narrative of her and Peeta being together. And I'm just like, ugh. And so she's kissing this guy that everyone thinks is her cousin. And then President Snow visits, and the number one thing I want to take away about President Snow, besides him being like pretty colloquial, like he seems to be, you know, they talk very straight to each other, and he says at the beginning, he's like, let's, you know, drop everything, let's just talk plainly. And that's kind of not how, when I think of Donald Sutherland's performance, I'm not thinking of somebody who's telling it to you straight. But the description of him that really stuck with me is that this man has fat plastic surgery lips, and I'm just picturing Donald Sutherland with huge lips, and it's so distracting. But he basically says, if you don't do whatever the Capitol says, we're gonna kill Gale, and basically anyone else, but particularly Gale. We know that you are actually in a relationship with him or whatever, even though she's like not really sure how she feels about him because she is so fundamentally changed by the game that she feels like the Capitol has taken away like the sort of ease that she used to have with Gale. They also have to have a talent. After they win the game, since they have nothing else to do for the rest of their life and they don't have to work, they have to like have a talent to show off to the Capitol. And it's just like another element of this like performance that it's being a victor is now your career and you have to perform all the time. Peeta is already good at art, so he's painting, and on the victory tour she sees the paintings that he has of the games and she is shocked and horrified by them, and she's saying things like, first of all, how do you remember these things so vividly? But also, like, why would you do that? Like, all I've been trying to do is get away from it. And he was saying that, like, I think the nightmares get a little bit better if I put it out there. I guess he's not like advertising the paintings. It's not like he's going out and about with those paintings specifically, but he has taken them on the train with him. So I'm assuming maybe they're being seen a little bit. I'm surprised that the Capitol would allow him to make those / show those. I don't know if they are being shown. We have also had the addressing of Seneca Crane. That was also in the meeting with President Snow. I don't believe Seneca Crane was named in book 1. He is in movie 1 quite a lot and brings a really interesting perspective into that. Katniss reads between the lines of what President Snow is trying to tell her and accurately guesses that Seneca Crane has been killed for what happened in the games. And Katniss is just trying to do her best to hold everything together and is like, hi, okay, I survived. Maybe if I don't piss the Capitol off, everything can go back to mostly normal. The thing is that, of course, sparks have caught fire. At the victory tour, you know, Peeta tells the people of District 11 that he wants to give like a month's worth of their money every single year to Thresh and Rue's family. He hadn't told anyone about that, and they're pissed about that. But Katniss, who hasn't prepared anything, who doesn't want to speak, who's terrible at public speaking in her mind, says something from the heart when she sees Rue's oldest sibling, who is younger than her. They do the whistle that Rue did. They do the 3-finger salute that Katniss introduced from home. Everyone gets shuffled away, and when Katniss tries to go back for something, she sees the man who stood up get shot in the head. And this is, oh shoot, the breaking point. No, violence is actually going to happen. Like, I cannot take back. I can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. There's nothing that can be done, so how do I ride this out? How do I keep the people that I love safe? When she is back home at the end of the victory tour, we're at District 12, and she ends up seeing on the TV that is supposed to only be the news feed specifically for the mayor. And the public does not have access to this feed, which I do have a question of, why does the mayor have it in the first place? Why would he need to know what's happening in District 8? He's not a Capitol person, but there has been an uprising in District 8 that took a while to put out. And Katniss is immediately thinking, maybe I can escape. And we go back to like the beginning of book 1, the very first scene when Gale and Katniss are talking about running away. Gale, he is, you know, very pro-revolution, is like, okay, let's run away. Maybe we can do it. We have a little bit more supplies. Let's run away. And then she tells him, there is actually an uprising going on. And he's like, never mind. We have to support the revolution. And here we kind of see the two sort of paths of Gale starting to be the revolutionary fighter, foot soldier maybe, and Peeta being the person who might be in a sort of leadership position, and sort of the dichotomy there. Editing Julie here. Not only are we seeing a dichotomy between the roles that Gale and Peeta are going to be playing in the revolution, but of course in a conversation between Gale and Katniss when they're disagreeing, we're seeing the differences between Gale and Katniss. Katniss is someone who has never once thought ahead of her actions. She is not someone who is trying to take collective action and be part of a force. Gale, when he hears about a force, he sees the hope there. So we can see that, like, Gale is a little bit more, let's say, politically engaged than Katniss is, and a little bit more aware of, like, what would actually need to happen in order to take down the Capitol. Katniss, while she wants the Capitol to not exist anymore, is never really in a place where she is thinking about ending the Capitol, right? She is purely thinking about survival for her family, and she wants people to get out while there is revolution and fighting happening, because what's most important to her is that people survive. She's not great at planning ahead, seeing the chessboard, which is why she sees that Peeta is good at this sort of thing, because he can see a chessboard. She doesn't really give that sort of credit to Gale, and we don't really know what Gale is capable of in that sort of sphere, because we really see him and he kind of takes on this role as the foot soldier. He is the gun. He is going to be the force who is doing what he is told because he sees this big bad enemy. Versus Katniss, she is not going out and wanting to hunt down people. She is not that type of person. She is only going to do that when she has to. She is wanting the best possible outcome. And that is why what happens in Mockingjay, at the end of Mockingjay, that's why Katniss chooses to do what she does, because she stays consistent throughout the series. I thought it was really interesting when Katniss realizes that there is no stopping the people from rebelling, that they need a leader. Her first thought is that it cannot be her. It has to be someone with confidence. It has to be someone who can persuade people and who knows what's right to do. And her first thought is Peeta. Love that so much. I love Peeta. And I love that these two are like comforting each other, like on the victory tour. Like he is holding her in her sleep so that she can actually get to sleep. And Peeta's just like a perfect character. And back home, things are getting worse throughout the districts. They realize, hey, we need to tamp down on District 12, which even though things are so bleak there, the rules have been stretched for so long that nobody even like remembers all the rules they're supposed to have. When we go to District 11 during the victory tour, it is how Rue said in book 1 that the security is so much tighter. And it definitely, the descriptions of the walls and the fence, it reminded me of prison, how slaves were treated and how slavery fed into the prison system in America. It just reminds me of that, especially when it's supposed to be set in the American South, when it's described as a predominantly Black place. It just really hammering that home. But now in District 12, things are getting tighter. We have a new peacekeeper who has come to town, and he whips Gale for hunting, which we know has been illegal, but in the past, the peacekeepers have been in on it with the people. They have been supporting them. And now we have someone who is locking it down, and people are actually too scared to leave their homes. And the last thing that really happened was an excursion out that I had absolutely no memory of. Like, other things felt familiar. This is a scene that I swear to God I've never read before, that a couple of people from District 8 are hiding out in the woods outside District 12, and Katniss meets them, and they tell her that they are trying to find District 13, which they believe. This is the only detail I remembered about this, was that the footage of District 13 that the Capitol uses is always the same every time. You can see this bird take off. Hearing the description of those people was entirely new to me, and it really has an interesting way of leading us into Mockingjay, because we are seeing all of the things away from us are leading toward revolution. We are seeing things try to stay normal around Katniss, and everything in the behind the scenes is working without her knowledge. And that's something that I knew going into the games part, when we meet all of the different people, like BT's plan and everything, and how obvious Plutarch is. Speaking of Plutarch, I did really like the scene where he gives her the hint and everything. I thought that was well written. One of my favorite parts of the Hunger Games was how it talked about food. And in this book in particular, when it is the turn to go to the Capitol on the victory tour, they get full and people are like, why did you stop eating? They're like, because we're full. And they give them drugged wine in order for them to throw up, just for the pleasure of putting more food in their mouths. And that is the most disgusting thing to both. This has been the strangest part of my reading this series thus far. Obviously, we're only into book 2 of 5. Just because only little bits and pieces that I've remembered of it so far. But I'm going to get a good portion of the way in. By the time I get to the end of my reading tonight, the games will not even have started. It is shocking how short the games are in Catching Fire specifically. The Hunger Games, it's at least like half the book. Alrighty, I'll get back to reading. Hello. I am 100 pages, real pages, not this edition pages, from the end of Catching Fire. So where did I last leave off? Nothing had been announced yet. I think we had stopped like right before things started kicking into gear. Act 1 was like our new status quo, which is so interesting because like that is not how the Hunger Games was paced, right? Like we get right into the action of everything really quickly, because like a lot of the building of the world in book 1 is done in flashback rather than in the actual action of it. So now we're seeing it sort of in the action, except now we're skipping through things really quickly. And there was just a lot more like implicit dialogue and more talking about stuff that happened rather than actually being in the scene than I remembered. And honestly, that was a little bit of a letdown, and I understand why that part of the book was not as memorable to me. Despite everyone loving Catching Fire, I would say that this is probably a book that I like a little bit less than the regular Hunger Games. I think the Hunger Games was like edited in a very tight way, and I think in this book I've had a little bit more nitpicks in the way that things have been presented to us, particularly in that first act. I definitely was getting the vibe at the beginning of this that there is clearly more to Haymitch, and that she is having us spend more time around him, clearly to get us more intrigued about him, and that does pay off. Katniss gets given all these wedding dresses she's supposed to try on, and she's not gonna even get to select her own wedding dress, even though it is designed by Cinna. I'm sorry. The Eastern Conference Finals are on right now, Game 1. I have tickets to Game 2. I'm currently losing to Kayla. Come on, Freddie. Sorry, I'm gonna be watching the game while I talk. The Capitol is going to vote on what her wedding dress is, and it's really emphasizing how much autonomy is lost by the victors. They are no longer people who can do whatever they want, and obviously they weren't able to do whatever they wanted as citizens of Panem. You think that when you win, like, it's over and it's done and you don't have to worry about anything anymore, and that's just not true. Like, after they announce the wedding dresses, they show off the photography and everything of the wedding dresses. President Snow pulls out a little envelope and pulls out of there apparently what the leaders who created the Hunger Games say that the 75th Hunger Games should be. And I did not remember that there is this like front put up that it is created by the founders. I didn't remember that at all. I just thought it was directly from Snow, and of course that is the implication that Katniss takes away from it. That this is directly because of her actions that they have been put back into the arena. And now we keep seeing like little mockingjay pop up in different places. Katniss has a full-on breakdown when she realizes that she is going back into the arena, like full trauma response. And her and Haymitch get drunk as hell, and she ends up like throwing up in the morning. First time she's ever been drunk, and Peeta comes in, pours out all the alcohol, and is like, we are getting whipped into shape. 2 of us are going into the arena. 1 of us is going to die. We have to get shit done. And it just really shows Peeta's leadership skills, because I think, again, like I said in book 1, Peeta is treated as a special little flower. He is strong, you know, he could hold his own in the Hunger Games, but like him winning, as they say later in the book, was mostly just because of Katniss rather than his own ability to survive. Him not being the absolute strongest, even though he is very strong and strong enough to have gotten as far as he did in the Hunger Games, is so like more assertive and more leader-like than I remember him from my perception of this series. And I really admire that about him, and it makes Katniss admire him too, who has found like a safe space in him, even if like she is so torn about her emotions about these boys, and she hates how she's being forced by the Capitol for Peeta, and then Gale by Gale, into sort of being romantic with these people when she's honestly too young and too messed up with all the stuff going on around her to really get those emotions straight. But you can see with Peeta, especially because he understands her pain specifically around the Hunger Games, that she finds a safe space in him, and she has realized how valuable he is. She also later even mentions that she no longer sees value in her own life, and she is going to do whatever it takes in order to keep Peeta alive. They start training and everything. Effie starts bringing up that we want to have some sort of like uniting thing for all of us. Let's have like something gold like the Mockingjay. And we also see, as the games develop, like more people are bringing up the Mockingjay. And we'll talk about that more in a bit. Peeta and Katniss end up watching Haymitch's games. We get actually a very long summary of it. It's several pages long. And that definitely is where this feeling of there's more to Haymitch has been leading up to finding out what happened in his games. And I think that it was sufficient to me. Like I remember feeling satisfied by it when I read it the first time. I am not the type of person who gets obsessed with side characters and like needs a side book. I'm not like a romance reader who is like, oh my god, that side character is so hot, I can't wait till we get his book. Like, and not making fun of those people at all. That's just not who I am. I'm like, if you make me care about somebody more than the main character, like, you're not doing your job right, in my opinion. Ugh. It's not bad. It's just the tip of his finger. We mention Maisie. She is Madge's aunt, and she was also friends with Katniss's mom. And like, she is the one who ends up having an alliance with Haymitch, and she's played by McKenna Grace in the movie. I'm under the impression. Like, I did not remember her being brought up in this book at all. It made me actually more excited for Sunrise and the Reaping. And I did like mark out like, okay, this is the description and these are the lines. Like, this is a line I know for a fact makes it into the trailer of the movie. So I know it made it into the book and everything. So that was kind of cool. We get to know other victors and we are training with them and everything. And we are trying to figure out who we want to have an alliance with, because alliances are going to be so much more important. We have upped the ante, right? It's going to be a little bit more political, and Katniss and Peeta are at the disadvantage of not being victors for very long. So everybody else kind of has friends, like trauma bonding of like, we've known about it. And something that I had to pause and I was like, hold on, oh my God, we missed it by an inch. I was like, what is the math that you're telling me it's possible that all of these people are like alive or whatever? There are 75 victors of the Hunger Games in the 74 games, because Katniss and Peeta are 2. They say 59 out of 75 winners ever are still alive. I would have assumed that there would have been like a higher death rate of victors, that they, would fall into addiction more or take their own lives. But I don't even know if that's like a channel that they see is available to them because of the way that the Capitol has a hold on them. And there happened to be at least one in every single district. And I'm going to have to run the probability on that, because that seems like a very, very low probability that that's possible. I actually decided to run the numbers on this. What are the chances that in 74 Hunger Games, there would be a male and a female victor from every single district? Not accounting for the fact that the careers have a better chance in 3 different ways. They have lifelong training, they have money in their districts, and they have the reputation that'll get them sponsorships. If you ignore that, in all the things in the books that say the careers have like majority of the wins, right? Ignore that. Say everybody has the exact same chance of winning the Hunger Games. How likely is it that there would be a victor, period, not even alive now, there were ever winners in every single one of those slots? Get a percentage in your head. Think about it. Get your number. The answer is about 34%. About 34% of the time. So about 1/3 of the time, which makes sense. We've had 3 chances to get through all of them. So a 1 in 3 shot that exists, sure. That's not accounting for the fact that there are dead people. Let's now do it for deaths. In the book, it says 59 of them are alive. Out of 59 games, what is the percent you think that the quarter quell could happen this way? Get your number again. It's about 9%. There is a 9% chance that this could happen without accounting for the distinct advantage that the careers have that Suzanne Collins came up with herself. So how is this possible? It's probably not. There's a person who on Reddit did the numbers accounting for the fact that the careers are at an advantage and said that there was a 3% chance that this was going to happen. So it's physically possible, but incredibly unlikely, unless there's some element of being rigged to the games. Unless you're having this implication that Suzanne Collins is like, okay, they actually want to give hope to all the districts, so all the districts need to have it. I think she just could have put something in there of like a caveat to be like, okay, this district actually didn't have a male and a female victor, so we actually had to put 2 female victors in, or something like that. I think just a little tiny nod to actually we didn't have enough people might have been just a little nice thing to throw in there. I don't know. That's just me. But as we're getting into learning more about the other victors, suddenly we know everybody's name. And it makes sense. And Katniss says to herself, like, I wasn't really paying attention to other people's names in the first Hunger Games because I was just so focused on trying to stay alive. And now I don't want to look back and find out their names. She does find out the name of Marvel, the boy she killed, who is named in the first movie, but not the book. I don't want to know their names because I don't want to like reopen that trauma. I don't want to think about the Hunger Games anymore. But now we know all of the names because they're all victors. So like it makes sense that she would know the names better here. But the thing is that clearly Suzanne Collins got some sort of note on why there were so few character names in book 1, because she is absolutely course correcting in the opposite direction. And now characters that we barely see are getting to have names. Like 2 different people who run the training room get names, and we only ever see the training room in 1 chapter. Why? But more training, I think it's interesting how we see like Katniss is always going for like an underdog. She is always going for these people who also like feel very different from her to be her allies. Like she doesn't want the big strong people. She does like quiet, reserved, like she's quiet for the most part. These people who like personality wise aren't sort of the brash person that she is. And I think that's really interesting. Oh, about Finnick. Finnick is obviously like such an important character, and it's no wonder that the fandom latched onto him because he's so interesting and different from like basically anybody else we've seen, and he is so well done by Sam Claflin in the movies. And the thing that really struck me is that he is known as being super sexy, and his whole thing is that like he has so many different relationships with people from the Capitol. He never really settles down or whatever. He deals in secrets is his whole thing. What I didn't remember is that he won the Hunger Games when he was 14, and they have all these descriptions of like how he was given so much stuff because he was so attractive as a 14-year-old that like, you know, they gave him a lot of like parachutes and stuff like that, and that helped him win, and people kind of underestimated him. Katniss mentions how, you know, because he was 14, the Capitol kind of had to keep their hands off of him for a couple of years, but once he turned 16, he could start essentially getting passed around by the Capitol, which just like really emphasizes how fucking disgusting the Capitol is. And it feels very relevant to right now that like young people are being exploited by the people in power. Especially, again, now that I'm older than all of these characters, it makes it so much more emphasized what these characters went through. Do I want to say anything else before we get into the game? Cinna. Ugh. The fucking amazing character that Cinna is, and the design of all of these clothing. I love the storytelling through the clothing and seeing how important those sorts of symbols are. And kind of showing that like anybody of different talents, like you'd think that like a fashion designer wouldn't be considered important, but like if there's anything that the Hunger Games teaches you is how important appearances are, no matter what side you're on. Well, I think we get more into that when we have the actual propaganda pieces that are going on in Mockingjay. He's playing into the Capitol's expectations, but being able to deliver messages to the district. So interesting. Of course, we have the Mockingjay dress reveal. So fantastic. And then the most iconic line in a book of all time, "If it weren't for the baby." I love PETA. I love PETA so much. He's the best ever. And he's like, "Hey, Katniss, I'm sorry. Should I have told you that ahead of time?" She's like, "Actually, no, you're fine. I think you might have done something there." It actually, to Katniss's eyes, does not seem to be a hugely popular thing with the Capitol that they are taking the victors back. There actually seems to be pushback from the citizens of the Capitol that victors are being put back. And then when they have the interviews, every single one puts in an argument in their Caesar Flickerman interview that we should not be doing this. This is wrong. BT has like a legal angle to it. He's like, is this really what the founders would have wanted? We need to look into the legality of this Hunger Games. And like everybody has their own different angle. There actually is a like large reaction to doing the wedding dress and everything, but the thing that really gets them is "if it weren't for the baby." And suddenly they are so upset about killing an unborn child who like not even large enough for Katniss to be able to show. Well, Cinna gets fucking killed. I mean, I know he gets killed. We don't know that he's dead yet, but he's dead. And it's so sudden and so clearly like they waited to make sure that Katniss saw. There's another Avox in Katniss's apartments that is a person from District 12 who was very recently taken, and she is so shaken by that and everything. Oh, one thing before the games start. Oh, I haven't even fucking talked about the training thing. Oh my god, there's so much to fucking talk about. We have the training montage and everything, and both of them, without talking to each other, PETA and Katniss decided to do different ways of protesting, and PETA had not planned to do it, but he decides to do a painting of Rue among the flowers. Like I was just saying with, you know, people in power taking advantage of children, Katniss hanging up the Seneca crane, very relevant stuff going on right now. Katniss and Peeta decide to take the last couple days of training to just relax. Katniss like, Peeta, what do you want to do? And he's like, I just want to spend the rest of the life we have outside the games with you. And she is like, I'm not cool with the I love you, you're my soulmate type stuff from both of these boys, but like, I understand. I also want to spend that time with you. They have this like picnic on the roof, and the way it's described, this day that they have together, reminds me of the epilogue of the series, and I just marked that out. I want to come back to that after I read the epilogue to see how those compare. But we've had a couple instances of talking about force fields. Wyrus and BT are able to point out that there's a little chink in the armor around the people, and also Katniss and Peeta have started playing games throwing stuff against the force field in the apartment building. And then we also see that Haymitch actually used the force field to his advantage during his games. And ended up winning that way because he tricked somebody into using it when it was clearly not supposed to be a function of the game. I mean, like, literally the first like big thing that happens in the game is Peeta fucking hits the force field. I mean, like, how small is this arena that they hit it immediately? Let's get into the games. I just love the description of the arena. She is the first one into the cornucopia, surprisingly. Girl, how do you know how to swim better than Finnick Odair? That's kind of crazy. Her and Finnick end up being able to talk for like 2 seconds, and he's like, oh, we're actually allies, and she was not onto that, but he's given the bracelet from Haymitch to signal to her. Like, they clearly have the same attitudes of like, I'm the person who is the fighting person in my group, and I know that we sort of need to work together, but when is this going to break? Because like all of the people had obviously like linked up their hands and everything in a show of solidarity against the Capitol, but once they actually get into the arena and they're forced into this, they do start killing each other. And of course, this arena was designed in order to kill off as many people as possible, even if other people aren't killing them. The sort of stalemate between Finnick and Katniss being like, we probably do need each other to survive, at least for now. Finnick knows he is on Katniss's side, but Katniss, just like in the first Hunger Games, she doesn't know who to trust and does not want to trust anyone. It's really hard for her. The last thing that happened to me was poor fucking Peeta just hitting the force field, and she's like, why is Finnick kissing Peeta? I am hoping to finish this tonight when I'm not watching the game. I'm gonna get into these games instead of those games. Don't think it'll be very difficult. I just have to stay awake. I'm really sleepy. I have packed my bag to go home for the weekend so I can go watch the Canes. Let's go. That's literally the only reason I'm coming home. I'm actually going to be coming straight back here basically after the game. I need to have a couple days to do nothing just to like catch up with like all the stuff I need to do around the house, like adult to do things, and like, you know, get ahead on content. My next video that I'm going to be posting, which the Taskmaster vlog that I'm doing, that's going to take so much time to edit. So I'm just going to like basically do a whole work day to try to get that done. I did finish Catching Fire at work today. Because of the game and other things, I wasn't able to finish it last night. It totally would have been possible, but I didn't have to stretch it. It's so shocking how little of the book the games are, and everything is so breakneck, but it's because there's no filler. Like, if you read the Hunger Games, obviously, there is downtime that Katniss has where she's like, okay, I have to figure out how to survive in this area. It is on purpose to a degree, because in only a day and a half, 2/3 of the competitors are wiped out, which is not at all what the experience of the last Hunger Games was. And everyone's pretty astonished that people are dying off so quickly. And it's because they made the terrain so deadly and not just the people. I think that the clock reveal is so iconic. As a kid reading that book, did not see that reveal coming at all. I really enjoyed it. Being in Katniss's head in this situation is very interesting. It sucks so much for her character because all she wants to do is save Peeta, and she cannot for her life save Peeta. Everybody but her saves Peeta. And she keeps seeing all these people die in front of her in weird ways. And she picks up that something's going on that people are not telling her. And honestly, I kind of forgot that Peeta was not in on it. The arena itself in Catching Fire is arguably the best part, at least from an entertainment standpoint, of the series as a whole. I think very few people would disagree with me, but please let me know, what do you think is like the most iconic portion of the Hunger Games? It feels almost exactly like the movie feels. I will say, when I really loved how paranoid and how Katniss doesn't know who to trust in this because nobody's telling her anything, even though they keep giving hints to her. It's interesting knowing what is going on and seeing Katniss not be able to see what's going on, because how could she? But I want to talk about the ending, which I love the scene of her like blowing up the arena and her figuring it out. Her piecing together basically like a crime scene, figuring out to blow up the force field. And like I was saying before that we'd already had 3 force field things. They are relentless about the fucking force field in this book. We are constantly talking about the force field. And it is more prevalent because it is a much smaller arena. It does seem that part of why it's so deadly is because it's a much more dangerous terrain and it's a smaller enclosure. One thing I talk about while the games are still going on, the Jabberjays. The Jabberjays, when Finnick is absolutely convinced that their family has been tortured because of that. And also it exposing the fact that he is in a relationship with Annie and loves her rather than the people who he's with in the Capitol. Like that particularly like is dangerous for him going forward. Katniss blows up the arena. She's lifted out by the helicopter and everything, and she's in a daze. She doesn't know what's going on. She keeps waking up medicated. She sees BT. She sees Finnick. She hears Plutarch and Haymitch. And when she finally comes to, it's a pretty one-to-one scene in the movie from what I remember of her like being like, oh my god, Haymitch, you're working with Plutarch, finally figuring out the plan. And I will say, I thought the way that the information was delivered was a little bit anticlimactic. Instead of giving us a long monologue, it is again implicit dialogue where she says, and then Haymitch told me the plan. And it was like 2 paragraphs of what the entire scheme of this book was, and we can't even get it in dialogue. I have a very strong belief that Suzanne Collins wrote a much longer book and that she was told it needed to be pared down. There are some things, like when we're on the Victory Tour, we don't need all the details. She hits the major points. And like her, like, for example, I mentioned the engagement earlier. Her not showing us the engagement, I think is actually purposeful because it's not a real proposal for them. So it doesn't matter. We don't need to do it emotionally. And we sort of have scenes doing the performance of their relationship in the interviews and everything. So we have that beat somewhere else. The fact that this specific thing was not presented to us in dialogue was so strange to me. And then of course, right after that, we get my most iconic line of the whole series. It's, in my opinion, the most memorable line in the entire series besides I Volunteer as Tribute. Besides that, Katniss, there is no District 12. I remember reading that as a child and being absolutely gobsmacked. It is like the best ending to a book ever. What a cliffhanger. And we are going off into the great unknown. And I think it really sets up what the YA dystopian series felt like. There's some sort of like gimmicky element about book 1. We have to try to figure out how to continue that into book 2. And then book 3, all bets are off. We are in an entirely different location now. I feel like if you look at a lot of YA dystopian series, that's exactly what the beats are. Book 3 is always, we are in a new location. Had a really good time with this, and I have been enjoying these books so much. Remembering things after I have forgotten them for a long time, seeing how actually high quality the series is and that it absolutely does stand up. And also just like that they are so engaging to read. I love how easy it is for me to get through it. I do think that I was more locked into and like hanging on every word in book 1. And I don't think that that's like novelty wearing off of this experience. I actually do think, oh, I wore a braid today. That was not on purpose. If it was on purpose, I would have done a French braid. This is just a regular braid, and I'm surprised it's kind of stayed. I know that Catching Fire is considered like the best book in the series. I think I actually like The Hunger Games better than I liked Catching Fire. I don't think it is a disappointing sequel. Skipping through time is not something that I love in books to begin with. I definitely enjoyed this, and we are gonna go watch the movie. Alrighty, it is time for my Catching Fire movie review. But before I get into that, I do want to say something funny that I noticed. I went into Goodreads to post that I had finished the book. When I put my review in, I saw that all those years ago, I actually made my Goodreads account like maybe 2 years after I read the book. But one of the first books that I put in there was like Percy Jackson, Heroes of Olympus, and The Hunger Games, and the name of this book is Secret were the first books that I put in my Goodreads. And I actually rated Catching Fire a 4-star compared to the 5-star that I gave The Hunger Games back in the day. 11, 12-year-old me also thought that Catching Fire wasn't as good as the first book. I had no idea that that was my opinion back in the day. I probably would have told you the popular opinion that Catching Fire was the best. And I do think that Catching Fire is the best of the movies. I don't have a great memory of Mockingjay other than liking it and having a positive opinion of it, like more so than other people. Catching Fire is the best. And I think partially there's a production change. I think the director might have done a better job in this one because there is a different director. The first movie had a different director than the rest of them, but I think that Francis Lawrence, who directed the rest of the movies, did for the most part a very good job. It's really interesting to see how like I am the same person, that I haven't necessarily changed all that much even though I'm literally twice as old as I was then. It's funny, I mean like sometimes when I'm editing a video or something, I'll be like, oh, I read this book, and then I'll pause. And then I'll just kind of talk to myself how I thought about that book. And then I will play the video and then I will say the exact same thing that I just said. Like I thought I had a big original thought that I thought I forgot to put in the video. But it turns out that's just how my neurons work. Like that I just said almost the exact same phrase. It's really interesting. Anyway, let's get to the movie. The very first thing that you notice, even from this opening shot, is just that the production value has gone up. So I did a little bit of research because last time I was so sure, since all of these movies came out back to back to back, that there must have been production overlap between 1 and 2. There was not. Everything else had overlap. Filming for The Hunger Games was May to September of 2011. The movie comes out in March. Principal photography starts on Catching Fire September 2012, and the movie comes out November of 2013. So there was a 6-month gap. That's kind of why everybody looks so much older in between Hunger Games and Catching Fire. The longest gap was between those. So the movie actually had time to become the global sensation that it was and get the money that they needed to make these movies look the way that they deserve to. And the production budget went up from $78 million to $130-something million between movie 1 and movie 2. And truly the difference is night and fucking day. Because they needed to make the arena, they also needed like a bigger budget in terms of like location, because they actually shot the arena in Hawaii versus North Carolina. As a North Carolinian, big fucking difference. It's also of note that this was such a big deal. They move the releases to be in November, late November. Thanksgiving weekend is the biggest weekend for movies. That's why you see all these Disney movies like Frozen and all the Pixar movies. Like I distinctly remember Frozen coming out Thanksgiving weekend because that's when we saw it. Which is why I was part of the hype train of Frozen, which actually came out the same year as Catching Fire, right? That is the biggest release time for movies. So it's like you have the big movies coming out in the summer and then you have big movies coming out the weekend of Thanksgiving, because that knocks out 2 holiday times for people to go see a movie. So they did get that, hey, that we're gonna make so much more money and everything. Mockingjay Part 1 and 2 were filmed back to back. They were not really separate productions. And that started filming before the release of Catching Fire. So that's how that ended up working out. At the beginning of the movie, we are in, of course, District 12. I forgot how iconic her freaking scarfy, sweatery thing that she's got on was. Like, when you see pictures of Katniss, I feel like that's a lot of what you see. First, one of the very first things that happens is new to the movie, and it's that we see when Katniss is trying to shoot some turkeys with Gale. When she shoots the turkey, it turns into Marvel and she sees her killing him again. I think that was a really good way to portray her PTSD. Instead of just using kind of the same notes over and over again, we see 3 instances of PTSD really getting into Katniss. Instead of, in the books, it's usually portrayed through her having the nightmares, which we do see later, but it shows it in different ways, and I think it was just a really, really effective way to visualize what she is going through. We get Gale. Gale's with her, and he still looks 30 million years old. Like, he actually isn't as old as he looks, but why does he look like that? And we are really having to shoehorn in anything about Gale, because I think they understand that Gale's not that fucking important. Not until Mockingjay does Gale become important, other than being like a fixture of Katniss's past, and also kind of being a symbol of home to her. Prim is like a symbol of innocence, but Gale is what she associates like District 12 with. The kiss feels forced. Him mentioning, oh, I'm in the mines 6 days a week, like it feels really shoehorned in, versus in the book it actually has time to breathe, and we're explaining how life has changed in District 12. Yes, now this group of people has a little bit more money, but like things have not really improved for their families. Just don't think that Jennifer Lawrence and Liam Hemsworth have any chemistry at all. We see her come back and she's meeting up with Haymitch. Peeta happens to be there, and Peeta's like got some bread for them, and he's like, wanna eat bread, Katniss? Or whatever he says. He's put a little bit of stank on it to like kind of show that these two are not cool. And Haymitch just goes, brr. I freaking love Haymitch. Snow shows up. I feel like Donald Sutherland's Snow comes across as more just outright aggressive, more so than he kind of seems to be in other scenes. I know he's trying to talk to Katniss straight, and that's what they say, but he definitely did seem more like, you know, a cat toying with a mouse in the book, versus this is just straight up, I'm gonna kill you, bitch. He also mentions that he could make District 12 go radioactive, which does make me question, what kind of weapons does the Capitol have? Because I know District 13 was supposed to be the one that's doing nuclear weapons and stuff like that. What technology has been lost to the Capitol because District 13 is no longer with them? And do they actually have nuclear weapons? Because that seems insane. But he is actually the one that mentions District 13 and is the one that is foreshadowing that to the audience. And also, this little slip in of the District 13 part feels way more natural than Gale slipping in anything, because guess what? Donald Sutherland is a better actor. I would say the most major thing omits is the runaways. The runaways are very much emphasized by the structure of the book, because the very last chapter of Act 1 of the book is her discovering them. In the first chapter of Act 2 is her talking to them. That is the turning point of the book, which it's not the turning point of the movie. We'll talk about it. Apparently, the director specifically cut that because he thought it would be too much of a giveaway in the medium of the movie. And I actually really agree. Because in the book, it doesn't come across as like the most likely thing in the world, versus if you shoved that scene into the movie, obviously you would think it's real. Why else would they put it there? The victory tour starts with some filming outside of the house. The tackle scene does not make any sense. Also, did they ever address, is Peeta an amputee in the movies? I thought that he slipped and fell because he's an amputee and his thing fell. Nope, he's not an amputee in the movies. Dude, what the hell? They show off that Chaff is an amputee. Anyway, point is, the things that they have filming them look like the glam bot. Did the glam bot or things like it exist before this? Because like that was wild of them to predict that. We get on the victory tour train. Something we don't see is Peeta's paintings of the Hunger Games, but what is this fuck-ass cardigan that Peeta is wearing? Is he a 14-year-old girl going to middle school? I understand that this was filmed in 2012 and that actually was like fashionable in 2012, but it is ugly as hell. We go on the tour, they start in District 11. I just do not think that Josh Hutcherson sells that Peeta is a good speaker. I don't think he's that good at speech giving. And it undermines Katniss's need politically for Peeta to be saved. Obviously, Katniss wants Peeta to be saved because she loves him and knows what he stands for. This like kindness and strength through the casting of Josh Hutcherson. Nothing against him. He really just does not have the gravitas that Peeta does in the books. He is not selling that he would be a good leader of a revolution, and therefore in the movies it is very, very clear that Katniss only wants to save him because she loves him. She's right in the books, but she's also like kidding herself. She sees Peeta's value on top of loving him, and I just don't think we show off Peeta's value in the movies basically at all. We'll talk about one thing where they do. However, Jennifer Lawrence's speech here is effective. Anything that has to do with Rue makes me feel emotional. I really think Jennifer Lawrence's acting in these movies is only really good when Katniss is emotional. When Katniss is just like normal, I do not believe a word that Jennifer Lawrence is saying. Like when she's having the meeting with Snow earlier, I did not buy her at all. But when she's doing this speech, I really bought it. And what I like is that as they go on the victory tour and they're doing the thing, she is very obviously like terrible at reading these speeches and does not believe them and everything. It's a really good dichotomy to see when Katniss is speaking from the heart and when she's not. I want to bring this up again. I brought it up in the last video, but I really hate that they take the tune away from Rue. And also, I think the movies conflate the two things together. The tune is from District 11, from Rue. The salute is from District 12. And these things had no connection to a rebellion before this happens in Catching Fire. Like, it was connected with Katniss, and Katniss is a symbol of the rebellion, but it's not until the man in District 11, this is the first time that those two things are paired together, and now this becomes a symbol of the revolution. But from the cultural footprint of the movie, those two things are intrinsically linked, and I think taking away the tune from Rue and making it something that Katniss did, like, undermines the symbol of unity that the whistle and the salute have. The man is straight up killed in front of them in the movie, rather than Katniss accidentally seeing it in the book. Maybe it's because, like, the visual nature of the movie, you see the Peacekeepers have this very clear visual identity, and I think it just really emphasized talking about police brutality and police state things in the movie. It made it more obvious to me than in the book. They get dragged away from the man who's shot in the head, and Haymitch has to be the exposition machine again. That really is his function in the movies, is to tell the audience exactly what's going on. But I don't think any of what he says sounds unnatural. But he gets to give the line again that he does in the books, just in a different place. He tells her, like, this tour is never going to be over after the victory tour is over. In the movie, he tells her at the beginning of the victory tour. I think Woody Harrelson is the most effective actor in the entirety of this series. Like, there is not a single moment where I'm looking at him and I'm thinking he's Woody Harrelson. Speaking of, we never get Haymitch's games in the movie. Madge doesn't exist in the movies, so we don't have, like, that connection there. Also, they could have maybe thought that, like, it was going to be too much foreshadowing to show him, like, with the force field and, like, outsmarting the games or something like that, but it's kind of sad to not see it. But now we get a movie out of it, so it's fine. The rest of the tour, we see at the speeches other people doing the salute, which I don't think happened in the books. It is delivered to Katniss in other ways that there is unrest happening in the districts. On the victory tour, there's a little girl that says, "I'm going to volunteer just like you did," which is devastating and new to the movie. Another thing that's new to the movie is we have 2 or 3 scenes with Snow and his granddaughter. She's wearing a Katniss braid, and he's like, "When did you start wearing your hair like that?" And she's like, "Oh, everybody's doing that at school. It's like fashionable." And that is kind of information that's delivered to us in other ways in the books, that Katniss is sort of influencing the culture of the capital. People are on her side more, and how much the people of the capital are not cool with the victors going back in. And it kind of shows a little bit of, like, this might be a mistake. In the movie, we actually see Plutarch and Snow talking about putting them back in. If I'm not wrong, it might even be Plutarch's idea. We also see Snow dribble blood out of his mouth, which starts like showing that he's ill, which I did not pick up on in the first book. Katniss says that he smells like roses and blood, and I thought that that was just like some Great Gatsby-esque symbolism. It's like, oh, he's got so much death on him. Is it supposed to be that, or is it supposed to be showing that he's ill? In the movie, Katniss is the one that comes up with the idea that they should get married. And like directly after that, they get the engagement. Versus when Haymitch gives her this tour is never going to end speech at the end of the tour, she realizes that her life is not her own and that maybe she only has a couple years before she is going to be forced to be married Peeta by the Capitol. You know, it's sort of her team's idea, let's do the engagement, but it's certainly not Katniss's idea. But seeing the photo that they use in the Caesar Flickerman insert where they show the engagement happening, which is exactly like what it happens in the books, that is just like briefly mentioned that they got engaged on the tour. The image here that they use reminded me, if you are not aware, the Hunger Games had a Tumblr that was the Capitol that was posting stuff that was all like Capitol fashion and all like that, and all the victors and tributes. And then when Mockingjay was happening, they had all these things of like the rebellion and everything. It was very, very cool marketing scheme. We get to the party, we get to the Capitol, and she does the eyes bright, chins up, smiles on. Fucking iconic. Elizabeth Banks is also fucking awesome in this movie. And I think she just sells Effie and makes her a little bit more of a sympathetic character. I mean, she gets more sympathetic as the books go on, but she is more in the Mockingjay era in the movies than she is in the book. The difference between the Capitol costuming, makeup, lighting is night and day. Even though the aesthetic of the Capitol did not change, it just sells it so much more. So Plutarch has her dance, and he makes it way more obvious in the movie that he is on her side for some reason. Like, she still doesn't buy it, but like it seems way more obvious that he likes her, and then he does not give her the clock hint. Like, I think that would have been subtle enough to insert that, so I don't know why they did that. We're putting inserts of the Game Maker stuff again, and it continues to be a good literary device, but now we're saying that Plutarch is almost like advising Snow on how to run the country, which I think is kind of weird. Like, why is Snow taking orders from anybody? But he's the one in the movies that suggests cracking down on 12, which that is a way for him to get in Snow's good graces, but it seems very strange. But I think it actually adds to the idea that Katniss shouldn't be trusting some of the people who are District 13 connected. Just kind of like how in the first movie they had Haymitch suggest some of the things to Seneca Crane that kind of felt out of character to me. This also felt a little bit weird. What kind of dress is she wearing? Floggings. When's the wedding gonna be? Executions. That little speech, it's so good and very clearly understands bread and circuses. And that is actually like a sound that has gone around on TikTok. She gets back from the Victory Tour and talks to Gale, and why does Gale look like Travis Kelce? I've literally never seen this guy who plays Thread. I had no memory of Thread when reading the books. This actor, I swear to God, I've never seen him before in my life. After Gale gets whipped, they're making a snow coat for him, and we have this scene between Katniss and Prim, and this is not in the book. Most of our time with Prim is like in Katniss's memory, and we don't get any Katniss flashbacks throughout the entirety of the series in the movies. And Willow's Shield's acting seems to have regressed from 1 to 2, and maybe it's just that it's not her screaming and crying, which she's good at. Her and Gale are almost more fixtures in Katniss's mind rather than being actual characters in the first 2 books. The games are announced, and the movie explicitly states that Snow is the one that chose it, rather than Katniss intuits that it must be Snow. The timing in the movie, in the book, page 210 of my copy of 472 pages. And in the movie, it happens 46 minutes into an hour and 41, 44% of the way through the book, 45% of the way through the movie. So the District 12 section takes up the exact same amount of time. I'm gonna charge my phone a little bit and then we'll come back. Before she leaves, they shove in another Gale kiss. I think there's a total of 3 Gale kisses. It feels like they're trying to convince us, and it just doesn't work. So now we have the reaping, and oh my God, is that butterfly fit just so iconic. When you think of Effie, to me, I think of the butterfly outfit. But I think Elizabeth Banks really sells she is putting on a show that she is trying to be her normal self, but is not okay with this. And I thought that was done well. And just like in the books, Katniss is not allowed to say goodbye to her family. They drag her away from them again. They love dragging Katniss away from people. From here, they remove the scene of finding the runaways. They've also removed the fence being electrified and everything. So like they show a shot of them going under the fence. So I thought that they were going to just like in the montage of like thread moving in, that they were going to have that. That would have been a really easy thing to do. Now we are in the Capitol. Haymitch shows them all the tributes, but I'm going to be so honest with you. In the books, I completely read what the morphlings look like wrong. We are introduced earlier that morphling is morphine. It is a sedative. It is what they give Gale when he gets whipped. This is not me trying to educate you. This is me saying I'm stupid. And when I see morphling, I think someone who's undergone a lot of plastic surgery, like some of the people in the Capitol have, right? I thought these were people, like, I guess maybe this was something that I left over for when I was younger. When I saw that term, I kind of ignored when it was saying morphling. Like, I completely forgot that it had been mentioned early in the book that it's a sedative, and that these people are taking all these drugs instead of being someone who's like just done a ton of stuff to their face, like a la Scott Westerfeld's Uglies. Like that's kind of what I was picturing. And then I see these people on the screen and they're like wasted from drug use and everything. And I'm like, oh shoot, that's what they meant. Haymitch also says about the morphlings that they won their games by hiding. These are two different people. They did not win in the same games. Also, other than Mags, I feel like they aged down a lot of the other people. There's nobody else who's portrayed as, like, old. Then we have the chariot scene. So, the chariot parade, that is where I started watching when I watched this movie like 6 months ago. Sam Claflin. He is Finnick Odair. Like, especially his look. His look is exactly what it is supposed to be. And I think the only thing that I have on him is that his American accent is not consistent. Watch the chariot entrance from movie 1 and this movie and just have a laugh. Like, really, production made a huge difference. And then Joanna comes on. Jenna Malone is one of the few actors in this movie, like Woody Harrelson, that's like, I completely forgot to call her Jenna in this. Like, I kept just saying Joanna, Joanna, Joanna. Like, I don't even think about the fact that this is an actress because I think she just embodies the character so well. I really think that the casting in Catching Fire specifically, they just went out of their way to pull really good people. The elevator scene may be the most iconic scene in all of the movies. The two iconic gifs that came out of this scene, Joanna's smirk and J-Law going. Also, Joanna mentions, she says, now that the whole world wants to sleep with you, and Katniss is like, the whole world doesn't want to sleep with me, and she's like, I wasn't talking to you. So she's talking to Peeta. She's flirting with Peeta. Joanna, they're 17. I guess according to the books, it seems like, first of all, it seems like the age of majority and the age of consent are not the same age. And I'm getting this from, obviously, people are reaped from 12 to 18. So it seems that people become an adult at 19. And then also when they're talking about Finnick and how essentially he became like kind of a prostitute for the Capitol, he wins at 14. In the movies, they say explicitly he is the youngest ever. In the books, they say he's one of the youngest. Even though they keep talking about how Finnick was so hot and that's why he lived because he kept getting all this good stuff, but he was underestimated because he was young. But they weren't allowed to like get their hands on him until he was 16. So it seems like the age of consent in the Hunger Games seems to be 16. Going into training, Jeffrey Wright, another fucking fantastic casting. He is that character. Like, that is such a good casting for him. That's like exactly what his character's like in Westworld too. I really enjoyed him in that show. The shooting simulation thing does not happen in the books. In the books, the training center is the exact same in 74th and 75th Hunger Games. In this, they seem to have an entirely new facility. When they do like the showing off for the game makers, they don't cover up Peeta's painting because, of course, movies are a visual medium and it is canonical that you do not say what happens in those sessions outside. So they couldn't just show it to us later. But in the book, they don't They don't have to show us the painting. We can just say that it happened and we can imagine it for ourselves. But it is more poignant for us to actually see what Peeta does because movies are a visual medium. That means it is very clear from Jennifer Lawrence's performance that Katniss is driven by Peeta doing the painting of Rue on the floor. That is why she does the Seneca Crane doll. Versus in the book, it is said so many times that Katniss and Peeta, without talking to each other and without knowing what the other one did, both did these acts of rebellion individually. Versus, you could also say that it kind of brings on the tone of Peeta might have done this to egg Katniss on. The wedding dress being what she wears to the interview is now a surprise to Katniss. She did not know about the wedding dress in the movie. Joanna is behind the scenes and goes, "Wedding dress? Really?" That line in the book is given to Finnick, and Joanna says to her, "Make them pay for it," and kind of fixes her necklace or whatever. And I think that as much as Joanna is the prickly one, right? I think that this more interestingly and correctly in the book characterizes them, because Finnick does not believe that Katniss and Peeta are in love, because he knows what the Capitol does to relationships, because he has essentially become a prostitute for the Capitol, right? He sees that Katniss is not doing this for real, and it's not until well into the games when he sees how much Katniss actually cares about him, he's like, hold on, they do love each other. And Joanna shows like a moment of kindness. It also shows that like either she buys the relationship or she sees this as this young girl is never going to get married, period. You know, this is like they are taking her the rest of her adult life away from her. It's a very interesting moment in Joanna's character to have her do that, and sort of show that Joanna can be on our side versus just like, you know, the brutal way she is portrayed throughout the rest of the movies. Anyway, the interviews go basically identically, and I actually believed Josh here when he was giving the baby little moment. And his cheeky little smile after he says, "It's the baby." Like, dude, you're on stage. People can see you, please. I said Plutarch's scenes are more interesting knowing he is on the side of the rebellion, because you're trying to see like the balance of where he's saying things. Like, what are the things that he's saying that are in service to the rebellion versus stuff to cover his tracks? She gets sent up in the elevator, Cinna gets beaten, and if you've never noticed, possibly the very coolest thing that happens in the movies is this directorial choice that happens. From the beginning of the movie until the elevator, the movie is shot in a widescreen. And then during the elevator ride, you'll have to look closely at it because it's dark. The aspect ratio widens to full IMAX. And when she gets up there and it's bright now, and it's stunning, it's visually shocking to see how the arena looks. And you are put into Katniss's perspective, sort of subconsciously, by this widening of the screen. It is such a cool thing. In the book, they have Katniss swim to the cornucopia, and in the movie they have her swim for a little bit until she gets to the spokes. They have her run down the spoke, and that's why she gets there like one of the first people. And it makes so much more fucking sense that Katniss would be sure-footed enough to not fall off like other people end up doing in the movie because she's a hunter, than for her to outswim Finnick O'Dare. Speaking of swimming, Peeta, in the movie, kills a man with his bare hands underwater and still manages to swim. It is established in the books that the only place to swim in District 12 is the lake that's like 2 miles outside of the district. Like, there's the fence is there. So nobody other than people who are brave enough to get past the fence know how to swim. Peeta in the books has to be saved by Finnick. Like, he stays on his podium until Finnick can come get him because he can't swim. That's like the only time in the movies where Peeta is shown to be like more lethal, more brutal, more of an asset than he is in the books. In the books, he is only credited with 2 deaths. He mercy kills the girl from District 8 in the Hunger Games, and in Catching Fire, he kills Brutus in that whole kerfuffle. We don't know how he did it. It never says what weapon he uses, or if he did it with his bare hands, which I doubt. Let's talk about the act structure of the book and the movie. The games start at page 321 of 471 in my inflated copy, and 123 out of 141 in the movies. That's 68% in the books and 82% of the way through the movie. The book is structured around the Act 1, Act 2 break, again, is around the runaways. And the Act 2, Act 3 break is exactly where you think it is when she gets up out of the elevator. So it's almost exactly 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. We have, 45% mark is District 12 and the Victory Tour. Then the 82% mark, so like 30-ish%, is the announcement of the games into training and up until the games. And then the games takes up the smallest portion of the movie. Arguably, the games portion is the most accurate part to the book. There's like the fewest omissions and stuff like that. And it's because it's action. The 74th Hunger Games are long. It takes place over weeks, and there's way more downtime versus Catching Fire, more like can't catch a fucking break. Like that's what this, it's just action after action after action. And a lot of the text is Katniss's inner monologue and trying to figure things out. And there's like a couple of conversations and survival things that are omitted by the movie, but like for the most part, it's the same in terms of the actual events that happen, and it's because action takes up way less time on screen. But yeah, the thing that the movie decided to pare down on ended up being most of the District 12 stuff. So not the Victory Tour, the other stuff around that, kind of sharing what life in District 12 and in Victor's Village specifically has been. And honestly, the book feels like a montage during that part. It does not feel as well paced, in my opinion, as the rest of the books do. So I kind of understand them cutting some of that because I think it feels more natural, that section, in the movie than it does in the book. Not saying the movie is better at all. We have the little scene, they were like cleaning out fish and stuff like that, and Peeta gives her the pearl. But what's interesting that they cut there is the bread. In the book, they are sent bread, a certain number of breads, and from a specific district. And that is supposed to communicate to them when things are going to happen. So when do they need the arena to blow up for their plans? Oh, man, that was such a cool thing in the book, and that was a thing that I did not remember, and so it was actually a total surprise to me when that was like a clue. Cornucopia spins. The fact that 0 weapons hit fucking anybody, incredible. I also think that Jenna's "there's no one left that I love" in the movie, I think it makes less sense. Because in the book, she is saying "there's no one left that I love" when she is saying that the Jabberjays can't hurt her. In the movie, she does this little like yelling at the Capitol thing. They like look at her like, "What are you doing? The Capitol could punish you for saying that." And she's like, "Well, there's no one left that I love." Like they can't torture the people that I love because of that. I think it felt a little bit more out of place in the movie. Maybe I'm just being picky. And then we have the beach scene where Peeta and Katniss have the one-on-one, the heart-to-heart that they have. And then they have their first real kiss. In the book, Katniss and Peeta kind of like signal very subtly in their speech to each other that they are speaking truthfully and not with the Capitol in mind. And then Peeta kind of signals that they're performing now when he mentions the baby, which again, the baby is never mentioned again in the movie. In the book, they bring it up like 2 other times, because Katniss keeps forgetting that she's supposed to have this fake baby. It wasn't a lie that they really tried to substantiate. And then I just like kind of didn't write down anything for a lot of the rest of the movie. It was basically verbatim what happens in the book. There's very, very few differences. She runs into Finnick instead of Anabaria or whatever. The thing that I complained about at the end of the book, you aren't given what the plan was in dialogue. And look, it's so much more effective in the movie when we have all of these people telling Katniss directly this was the plan. Like, I bought it way more when I'm seeing Philip Seymour Hoffman give me a monologue than when just saying, "Oh, this is what happened." Face that she makes at the end of the movie that's supposed to be her going from like sad to angry is actually just funny, and nobody would ever do that in real life. The evolving Mockingjay logo that they do at the end of the movie is brilliant, and I love it. It's so effective. And then Coldplay starts playing. Didn't know Coldplay was on the soundtrack. And then Hulu decided to suggest that I watch Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes instead of Mockingjay Part 1. A couple of things that the movies completely removed, and some of them I already mentioned. The lie that Gale is her cousin, the entire like wedding dress try-on thing, and Peeta and Katniss being forced to like perform for the Capitol with talents. Fence getting electrified, Haymitch's Hunger Games. The one thing I really didn't mention was Katniss and Peeta's like vacation, where the two of them basically just have like picnic on the roof of the training area and like throwing things at the force field, which again, there's so many mentions of the force field. They literally do not let you forget it for 5 seconds. It ties really nicely into the epilogue. I thought the Runaways was really the only like major substantial difference from book to movie. The only thing that I remembered about the Runaways was them talking about how the footage of District 13 is repeated and the same bird takes off in the corner every time. I remember that really vividly. So I'm wondering if that footage, that scene thing happens in Mockingjay, or if that was just such a stunning, like such a memorable visual in the book that I remembered it. I did really enjoy the Catching Fire movie. Overall, I think it's really effective. I think it's a good adaptation. It did a great job, and I had a good time. Please let me know your thoughts. Thank you all so much for watching. I did continue on in this series because you all requested it. So definitely make sure to leave a like, comment. Let me know that you want me to continue on into Mockingjay. I'm gonna have to talk about 2 movies for Mockingjay, which is wild. And if you don't have anything to say, you can leave me a fire emoji, just to let me know that you're here. And if you enjoyed the video and want to make sure that you catch my Mockingjay one, you can hit subscribe. I'd love to have you around. And as always, I will see you in the next one.